Welcome to myFace, myStory, Voices from the Craniofacial Community, with your host, Dina Zuckerberg.
Hello and welcome. You are tuning into myFace, myStory, Voices from the Craniofacial Community. Don't forget to click subscribe so that you'll never miss a future episode. I am Dina Zuckerberg, Director of Family Programs at myFace. I was born with a cleft lip, a hearing loss, and no vision in my left eye, but it has never stopped me from doing anything I've ever wanted to do in my life. I had 6 surgeries growing up, years of orthodontics, and speech therapy. In school, I was teased, kids would say mean things, and I would sit alone sometimes on the school bus and in the lunchroom. I always say there is power in the shared story in knowing you are not alone. I see you. We all do. It's about people like us being seen and heard, about sharing stories from the craniofacial community. Today's episode is about discovering love. Finding a partner can be difficult for anyone, but for people with craniofacial differences, there can be additional barriers. Relationships and intimacy have always been hard for me. Full confession, I've only been on a couple of dates in my life. I can't tell you how often I have thought about dating though, and I even set up a profile on Match.com and then I ran away from it. Is it fear of rejection? Is it the fear of getting too close to someone and being seen with what I perceive are my flaws? The first thing someone sees when they meet you for the first time is your face. Is it the fear of being open with someone physically or emotionally? Is it the fear of removing my armor and being vulnerable with someone? I don't think it's any one thing. I think because many of us have been judged for our looks at one time or another, or have dealt with rejection, putting ourselves out there is always challenging and can be even more so with a facial difference. With our special guests, we are going to explore these issues and more. They are all in different stages of the journey, navigating intimacy and relationships. Jeryl Brunner is a writer, actress, and podcaster. As a journalist, she is a regular contributor to Forbes.com and Parade.com. Her publishing credits also include O, the Oprah Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, and InStyle. Jeryl is the author of the book My City, My New York. Famous New Yorkers share their favorite places. She also has a podcast, When Lightning Strikes, with the Broadway Podcast Network, where she interviews theater artists. Jeryl is working on her play, One Date Love, about the lengths we go to get people to love us. She was born with a cleft lip and palate and has had many surgeries and speech therapy growing up. Welcome, Jeryl.
Hi, Dina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dean Kandilakis is an idealist, internationalist, Europhile, lover of history, and explorer of foreign cultures and peoples. He was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate and raised in New York. He has always been curious about the world around him since he was 13 and has since then covered his bedroom wall with maps. He studied languages and international relations at university and has lived on 3 continents, exploring different realities and learning something new about himself and others along the way. He continues to seek meaningful friendships and experiences around the world through work, volunteer, and study opportunities. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Dina.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Ann Piesen is a wife, mother, daughter, friend, glass artist, and an urban planner from Washington, D.C. She was also born with Treacher-Collins syndrome and underwent many surgeries at NYU. She is quite familiar with the bullying and social and emotional uncertainty that sometimes comes with being a person living with a facial difference.
Thank you for having me, Dina. Hey, thank you.
Thank you. Eric Riklin is a clinical psychology intern at the UCLA Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior and a sixth-year doctoral candidate at Fordham University. Eric was born with a rare craniofacial diagnosis called Crouzon syndrome. He has authored over 40 publications and presentations and is currently conducting research examining the psychosocial needs of youth with medical conditions. Eric is the psychologist for the Craniofacial Clinic at UCLA and has created and led in-person and online support groups for adolescents with craniofacial conditions through myFace to provide added support to those going through similar challenges and experiences. He is expected to receive his PhD in summer 2022 and hopes to continue his work as a clinical psychologist for pediatric patients. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Dina, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So welcome and thank you for all joining me today. I want to start with you, Dean. If you could spend your whole life hiding, if you spend your whole life hiding and scared of rejection, how do you even begin putting yourself out there to start dating?
Well, that's the catch-22. I mean, you're caught between the fear, the deep cuts of rejection, and the curiosity that you have of what is out there. What are the possibilities? And I think the thing you have to do is just take one step at a time, and begin to, because I think dating is a social process. So I think just get out there with people and getting used to relating to people is in a very basic way, is a good way to start the whole process. You can do it through hobbies, activities, anything, and also in an area of comfort to you, so that if something should go a little bit off, then you still feel like you're okay. You feel pretty secure within that environment. So I think the key really is to start with what you like to do and where you feel comfortable, and interact with people in that environment.
Yes, I always think if you could maybe find a shared interest with others, then that's a nice way to meet people, if possible. So,
Absolutely, I think it's you want it to be as natural as possible. You don't want to have to feel so stressed out that you can't even talk to somebody. So that's really key.
thank you. So, Anne, when you were growing up, did you expect to find a partner someday? If not, what helped you to change your mind about that? What did your parents say to you, if anything, about finding a partner?
So I think I come from a slightly more unusual situation in that my father also has Treacher-Collins syndrome. So I always had that example of, that's possible. My father found my mother. They were married for, over 50 years. And so I think I always knew it was possible. I think if my parents had said something like, "Oh, you're pretty," or "You could do this," I would have been very skeptical of that. So I really looked to their example. They encouraged me to go out and not necessarily date, but do things that would, possibly involve dating, like going to dances. And, while I didn't go with a date per se, I went with a friend. Being out there in those social situations, feeling pretty, having fun with a whole group of people, it really did help in developing my self-confidence, or at least what to expect. But I will say that, I think my parents' example holds true for all of us, in that, we have so many peers who are going and have gone through the same things as, you and us, that it is possible because other people can do this, we shouldn't count ourselves out. So.
Really true. So can you, and to follow up, can you share with us briefly how you met your husband?
So it's I forget how many years I've been married, but I know it's over 21 at this point. So I met my husband in person at an after party in DC, and I was there with a guy who had actually met online, but we weren't dating at that point. So I saw this nice Jewish boy who seemed kind of approachable and maybe a little shy, and I don't think we spoke for more than a minute, but I just was like, oh, I think he's really nice. And I guess I was the assertive one because I got his email from a mutual acquaintance and reached out, and my husband was a little maybe introverted. And, I just said, hey, maybe we should go out and meet for coffee, maybe possibly sometime, kind of protecting myself, but still kind of putting out feelers. And, we kind of were going in the dating direction. And so, by the point I actually was like, oh, this is going kind of different, because not that I hadn't dated before, but I was, a little uncomfortable with him touching my hair or my ears because, I wear a hearing aid. I have microtia. And, having to take down that armor, that protective barrier. And it was really, really hard. To just, because I had that happy face up and cheerful the whole time. And, this is the scary part. And I was prepared to be rejected, but I told him about what I had and, my surgeries, and went into much more detail. And I said, hey, my ears are like this. And there was that amazing moment where he was just like, so, and it went on from there. And so many years later, so it was a good ending.
Sounds like it. And I think in what you just said, there's so much great advice in just sharing that story. So Eric, I recently read that the number one thing that people look for when on a dating app is someone's smile, because it shows that you are a kind and caring person. I think this can be challenging for some of us, though, in the craniofacial community. So on that note, Eric, at what point in the relationship do you reveal your facial difference? If you're meeting someone online or through a matchmaker, do you disclose your facial difference before even meeting them in person? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, especially for our community when there are physical limitations that can prevent certain things like smiling or feeling comfortable, especially when you're putting your face up on a picture on a dating app. And I think there's just so many differences for a lot of different people, whether it's like racial differences, cultural differences, sexual differences, and having that unique difference is really what makes us who we are. And feeling like you're comfortable sharing that really takes time. And it's because it's so unique, it's really dependent on the person. And so I think for me, at least personally, one thing that I do is I love to share my story in the sense of why I do what I do. And part of that is becoming a psychologist for craniofacial communities. And I can't really share that without saying that I have a craniofacial condition. And I think it really depends on who you're meeting and who you're spending your time with. If the feeling feels right, then sometimes it feels like, okay, I can share and it feels comfortable. And if not, you're going to get that sense, and it might not be the right time to do it. For me, personally, I tend to try to put it out there to gain agency in it. And I think if you're able to kind of hold it and feel power with your story and feel power with your identity, it takes it away from somebody else to try to make any sort of notions or preconceived stigma or stereotypes about what might or might not be going on. So if you can own it and share it, I feel like it allows the other person to better understand what's going on and feel more comfortable in the situation as well.
Really true. So to follow up, Eric, I know you're engaged. Can you tell us how you met your fiance?
Yeah. I think I think growing up, I always had like those images of like Disney princesses and things like walking down the aisle and just bumping into someone, and then it kind of the spark happens. But I don't know if that was always the case for people. And I think that was sometimes something that you see in movies, not always true. But for me, I met my partner in grad school, and we were actually going out on a pizza event with everybody else in my cohort. And I saw her across the way, and I was like, she's really pretty. I really want to talk to her. And so I didn't really feel ready to talk to her right then. But then as the night started going, I started getting feeling like, okay, this is comfortable. She's over there, but I'm over here, but I could go close to her. And so I just went up and started chatting with her. We talked about sports, we talked about life, we talked about adventures, and then it really felt like it was natural. It just felt like super easy to talk to her. And after that, I kind of found her on Facebook, and I saw a photo of her. It was around Thanksgiving that she went to the Thanksgiving Day parade in New York, and I just randomly put a comment like, "Hey, I don't have your number, but maybe we should get it. Maybe we should chat about things." And she responded back, gave me her number, and that was 5.5 years ago, and we texted and talked ever since. So it was a kind of just a random occurrence where you just kind of show up in a random event, and sometimes people really enjoy it, and people don't. And you just find someone who feels comfortable in that moment.
Thank you. And congratulations, Eric. It's really nice. So are you planning your wedding soon?
Yes, yeah, we're getting
Nice.
married later this year, trying to avoid the pandemic related delays. But it's exciting. It's much more expensive than I thought it would be to plan a wedding, but I guess that's the nature. But very excited. I'm really, really lucky. I'm the lucky one, and so it really is nice to have this sort of next chapter in our lives.
Nice. Anne, did you want to add something?
No, I was just was wondering, Eric, it's more like a social dance. Like when you're dating, it's not like you're going in looking for a date. And maybe that's what makes me a little bit uncomfortable about some of the dating apps is like, I'm here for one thing. And I think it sounds like for you, and I kind of relate to that, is that, it was this social dance of, it might be good, but are they compatible? Like you kind of go in through the friend and with interest.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think your point before, you were saying, spending time with peers and just being in a situation where you're around others and then it kind of happens. I think that's so important because it makes you feel comfortable. You're around people who also know you and appreciate you. And it really is a social dance. I think, at least for me, I feel like I had this expectation of finding someone and needing to find this like amazing partner, and it's going to fit in these boxes that are like this checklist. And that's not always the case. And I think with the dating apps, you've kind of had that expectation. Like, I'm going to find someone on Tinder or Bumble or whatever the app may be. And you feel like it's going to happen. And there's such a high expectation for it. But if you just go in with like a more open acceptance and just wait for the time when it feels right and kind of navigate this social dance of, okay, does it feel good? Is this feeling all right? And feeling okay with that uncertainty, it can really lead you down a path of better acceptance and kind of finding the person that really just makes you feel more natural and feeling like yourself.
I think that's great advice. So we have a question from Morgan. If you could tell your younger self who is just starting to date any advice, what will it be? I think it's a great question. Does anybody want to take that? Jeryl, do you want to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so moved by what I've heard already and inspired by all of you. And I think what I've learned is really to look at what I want, what my needs are, what makes me happy, instead of thinking about the other. I mean, also, I feel like if I can come fully me and fully ready to give and share, then that makes all the difference. So sometimes I think, what if I made, looking back, a list, of all the qualities that I appreciate in myself, that I want to give, and also qualities that I'd love to have in a partner. So I'm more, instead of, oh, will they like me? Because I think oftentimes it's sort of like when I was making friends as a child or trying to make friends, and I didn't have friends and I was made fun of, and it was just kind of, it felt like a miracle a miracle, but it just felt so monumental when somebody wanted to be my friend. And I think when I started dating, it was like, oh, do they like me? Rather than, do I want to be with this person? And what can I give to them? And how can they add to my life? How can I add to their life? So it's like a dance, between us.
It really is, isn't it? So to follow up, Jeryl, can you share with us? I know you have your show that you're working on, your play called One Date Love, and what inspired you to write and perform it? Because I know it's so much related to this very topic.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, when for a long time, I shut myself off from dating. I was feeling very insecure, and also I lost my mother when I was 30, and that was very profound. That I felt like here I loved my mother so much, and when I lost her, I loved her so much, and it felt like, gosh, you love. And then you can lose somebody you love, whether it's a romantic or a parental love, or it just felt so devastating. So I shut myself off for like a really long time. And then I looked around and I realized a lot of time had gone by and I hadn't nurtured that part of myself. So I started going online, and I was kind of, what I was saying before was, will he like me? That was my MO. And there was like this, like almost, dare I say, like a desperate element, because I was just so thrilled if I could go on a date and we could possibly get to a second date. And I really deleted myself, and I really lost myself in the process, and I had a lot of wacky experiences, and I just thought there's so much learning here. And I ended up writing a play about all the crazy things I did for my dates. I was a fact checker at a magazine for many years, and I took those fact checking skills and would fact check my dates. So I would in the play, I fact check a pickle maker, a fly fisherman, an architect. This is loosely based on what I did in real life, but that I was so obsessed with pleasing these men that I would fact check them and all the things I did to try to get that second date or to get them to like me. And then ultimately I ended up realizing, wait, what about me in the process? And so so my play is about that journey, my journey to find love and also to love myself.
I had the privilege to see One Date Love when you performed it, and I must say it's pretty amazing. And
thank you.
I encourage anybody to go see it if and when it comes to Broadway, which I.
Oh, well, there are plans to get it to New York in 2022.
Great.
And there is comedy in it. It's not just a lot of tragedy, a lot of comedy.
It is.
I hope.
Yeah. So to follow up with that, and anybody can answer this, Charmaine says she loves the stories. Do any of you feel that people with facial differences are at a disadvantage when it comes to online dating? Dean, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the online dating apparatus is centered around appearance. Okay, I mean, it's been drilled into us for many years. Image is everything. But for those of us with a facial difference, we don't have a chance to show people who we really are, because you're just this one-dimensional thing you're seeing, this picture. You have words that you're describing about yourself, but we're at a disadvantage in terms of online dating, unless I think one strategy is to go to a certain website that's 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 devoted to disabled or maybe facially different. I haven't seen one for facially different people exclusively, but a website that would be welcoming of those with facial differences. But I mean, my feeling of going through all the regular dating apps is that it's been incredibly difficult to meet up with people. It's You're already starting with two strikes against you. My feeling. I mean, it's my experience. That's why I prefer to do things more in person, to meet people in person. That way, you have more influence, more power to influence people's thinking about who you are as a person with a facial difference, and there's so much more than just the surface, right?
Right. And I think sometimes that's hard to portray when you're doing an online dating app, to show what's below the surface, because you're putting a profile picture up there, and that alone is already something. And that's the one thing that I think people look at when they're searching on these dating apps for who they might be interested in. So, Anne, how do you overcome, because I think this is a big thing I know for me, how do you overcome the fear of being rejected or bounce back from it if you are in fact rejected? Anne, are you
I think she might be muted.
Are you
Oh,
muted?
yes, I'm on mute. I like talking to myself. So it is definitely not easy. There were times where, it was very wounding and, took a lot to regroup, so to speak. But I think, you do have to start out with really understanding your own value and your own confidence. It's not about finding a person. It is about finding someone who has a good fit with you. And I certainly dated enough frogs that it occurred to me after a point that rejection wasn't all about me. It wasn't all about my face. That if that person rejects you, it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit for you. And it's not, there could be something about them. And the other thing I had to make my, self-aware about was, it wasn't about my face. It could have been my personality. It could have been any of the things that people are rejected for, with or without a facial difference. And I'll say the ones who, were really forthcoming and said it was about my appearance, they definitely were not the right people for me. And I am fortunate and blessed that those people who who my husband, my friends, my family, they accept me for me. It's not about my face. So you kind of have to remember that as you go through that process, because it is scary at times. We wear more armor than the average person. And you have to let that down to let somebody in. So that's all I can really say about that. But
yeah, it's interesting. Someone once told me, instead of worrying about what they're thinking of you, think about who are you looking for in a person? What are the things you want in the relationship? And it was sort of flipping it for me, but it actually made a whole lot of sense to think about that rather than thinking about what they think of me. So, Eric, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think what Anne said was phenomenal, because I was so spot on. And I think that shift of mind is so hard, because we're so ingrained in us to think about what other people are thinking first, that we're now addressing it that way. Like, we've been told, like, this is what's wrong with you, this is what you can't do, this is all these things. And so I think what Anne's saying is so important, that you have to shift that to think, okay, what do I like about that person, or what is it that this person brings to me that brings me joy or brings me attraction? And that's hard. And so it's not an easy journey, that's for sure. But I think because it's been so ingrained in us, it's like a hard thing to just shift on a dime in a lot of ways.
It's true. And someone actually just commented to say that I always remind myself that there's lots of nice people I meet in the world, but I'm not necessarily attracted to most of them. I can't expect everyone else to be attracted to me. And somebody else said it's so wounding, rejection because of something you can't change. It's hard, and that's true. It's hard to get rejected, but I think the reality is everybody at some point or another, whether you have a facial difference or not, deals with that, and it's how you move on from that that's really important. So related to that, how important is vulnerability to a relationship? How do you let down your armor so you can get close to someone? This is certainly something that I know I struggle with, is letting that armor down. So, Anne, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I spoke to it a little bit already, but in order to make a connection, a close connection with another person, you have to trust them. And I come from a different generation than like the millennials who kind of let it all hang out there. I was from a generation where it was still very much a hide what you can, present yourself as typical as everybody else as you possibly can, because you'll be discriminated against. And so that was really hard for me. But as I get older, I realize I cannot hold back what is really part of me. Every single day I change my hearing aid battery. Sometimes my hearing aid dies. Sometimes I have to go in for a surgery. This is my life experience. This is part of who forms me. And it's not a bad thing. I don't talk about it all the time, but sometimes it's really important. If I can share that with my friends, I certainly could share that with someone that I'm dating or would like to date, because it's such an important part of me.
Yeah.
But it's so hard.
It is, but I agree. I think it is important to share those things with somebody in your life. Dean, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that because I really think that our experiences have shaped us in such a different way. I think people don't really realize how profoundly it shapes us. I think that I don't know whether people have a lack of empathy or whether they're just not thinking. If you have a scar on your face, it means something, right? I mean, I don't know. I just think that people tend to be either they downplay it, so that you have to end up valuing your experience to the point where you have to say, "Hey, this is my experience," and it's about cultivating that respect for yourself, and then earning earning their trust and them earning your trust, and the whole process. But it's definitely a difficult process. And one thing I like to add is that in dating, I've said this before, is that to practice the art of like detachment, like you're not really you're dating, but you're not really taking it too seriously. At least in the beginning, until you see that there's some commitment there from the other person. But I think you just want to be ready to get back in a safe spot as well if something goes bad.
You,
Yes, Joe.
oh, about vulnerability, I was thinking that you're showing people that you're human, I think it's another way of letting people in and showing your humanity, and hopefully that'll get them to show their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's a really wonderful thing when you can be vulnerable.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is, I think, important in any relationship, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard for me to be vulnerable with somebody, but
Yes.
I find when I am, it's a much deeper conversation when you can do that. So I agree. And Eric, did you?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to the rejection too, I think the more you get that rejection, sometimes it could be harder to feel more vulnerable, to be able to be vulnerable, because you feel like that armor needs to be layered on even thicker because of the rejection. And I think kind of what everybody's talking about, it's really just showing your, I think Jeryl put it so well. It's like showing your humanity, showing who you are, that really strengthens you and strengthens your bond to the next person. So being okay with the rejection and then being able to step over that and then be able to then understand I need to let people see who I am so that way I can see who they are. And then you share that bond and then that strengthens that relationship even further.
Absolutely. So, Jill,
Yeah.
do you think it's easier to find a partner as you've gotten older, either because you've developed more confidence or because people priorities shift as they age?
Well, that's a good question. You know, it's funny because while I've been working on this play, I haven't been really trying. I haven't been on a dating site in a long while. In fact, I had a lot more fun, to be honest, writing the play than actually writing about dating than actually dating. But I think knowing what I know now, learn what I've learned now, and also being more or not being so invested in the other as much. I mean, of course, I care about and I wonder what people think of me, and I want to make a good impression, and all those pieces. I think as I've gotten older, I realize I can't control anybody. I can control myself. You know, this is my movie. You know, I'm in my movie. What is it saying? The kids say, and that I think that I have more of an awareness that it's if somebody doesn't like me or is not interested, that it's not. I don't have to keep trying to get them to like me. I can move on, and hopefully see that that it's not, that as you said, Anne, it doesn't define, it's not that I'm a bad person. It's their opinion, or the chemistry's not there. So I think it is easier, with my life experience now.
And Eric?
Yeah, I think Jeryl, you're totally right in that, your own experience can help you understand the world better, and then it allows you to then understand what your priorities are. And I think also other people's priorities definitely shift as you get older too, especially for our younger generations. I think of, especially with social media, the way you're supposed to be looking these days. I think at a younger age, there is this big, drive for people to find that like pretty person, that like football star or whatever it may be, or, pageant queen or pageant king. And to be able to shift that is really hard when we're younger because it's such a biological drive for us to find attraction and to find those who look good, whatever that may be. But as you get older, you start to understand that you don't need that peer pressure. You don't need that expectation of whatever it may be when you're younger. And so as you get older, I think other people's priorities do shift, and they start to understand that it's more about the connection and the person behind the attraction rather than the attraction itself. And so I mean, it's a little cliche in that, I think as you get older, things do get better, but it's something, it's a cliche for a reason, because part of it is true.
Yeah, I think that I remember when I was younger, I didn't even think about how I looked. I mean, this is before the internet. My awareness of my body was like 0. I mean, nowadays it's 100, right? I mean, everybody's looking at their bodies, how many was it a 6-pack or a 4-pack? Are they fit or it's this whole like this race to the top in terms of the body. And I think that when you get older, I care less. I mean, I've already been through the mill of people. I've already been through lots of interaction with lots of people, and you get to see quality when much better when you first meet it. You get a sense of who people are, and you have a better sense of who you are as a person, and that you don't need somebody else as much. And you need the stimulation, but if you can't get it, then I'd rather be reading a book or
Yeah.
doing something else.
So Dina, I think what I have seen as I've gotten older is that like a lot of the things there's some biological drives there, but if a lot of what I thought was the way it was supposed to be when I was younger was really just not. It was one-dimensional. It was so just a small tip of what the big reality of a person and people are, that it becomes you become more aware that like this isn't really what's important. It's not gonna. This is was it beauty fades. There's some quote out there, but it's not what sticks around, and really that's not what's beautiful about a person, that appearance. And it's so disturbing to me now how filters and auto Facetune and all that make it even more difficult, I think. So I'm so glad that I didn't meet my husband online, that I had that more multidimensional experience to really have that opportunity to kind of understand the full person in context to my environment. So
we actually have a comment that says, I agree, social media made it harder to fit in. You can't control everyone's feelings. I believe what matters is that it starts with accepting yourself and knowing your value. So I think that's really true. Here's an interesting question. What advice can you give to a parent how to support my teen about to go to college who has never had any experience with dating? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think that what has helped me the most is being with my peers. That my parents could give me their love and support. And my father had the same condition that I did, but he comes from a different generation. But there's nothing like being in a room with your peers who have experienced the same thing and getting their perspectives and seeing them. It's like what I was saying. My parents set an example for me. Well, my peers set an example right here and now. And I have gotten amazing advice and amazing friendships from people with Treacher-Collins syndrome, with other facial differences. It really, really helps. So that's what I would recommend.
Also,
yeah.
Oh, maybe as Dean said before, I would say start with your interests. Like if you love, if there's a movie club or some kind of club or organization, find your passion and then keep yourself open. I know that maybe this is the strangest advice, but a friend of mine who's who dates a lot, she said that she smiles. And like you were saying, and that people, and just she'll smile at people, and that it opens up people to her. And she has was born with a craniofacial condition, and she said it sounds maybe so basic, but just being open to it is helpful.
Really true. Eric, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just, I think also just going in with an understanding that a lot of it's based on comfort too. I think there's a lot of expectations that you need to be dating, you need to be going on dates. If your peers are dating, you have to date. I think it's also based on the individual in the sense of if they feel ready to do it, then that's great. And if they don't feel ready, that's also great. Especially going into college, there's so much exploration in terms of your own identity and trying to understand what you want in life. So I think for parents, just letting their kids know that it's okay, whatever they're comfortable with, and that they accept them for that, they're ready for that, and then allow them then to understand what path they want to go on when they get to college, and whether it be going on multiple dates, waiting till after college to go on dates. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever feels comfortable and right in that moment, and you're not going to know, unfortunately, until you dive in and see what feels best.
Absolutely. So here's my last question to each of you, or whoever wants to answer this. What is the one piece of advice overall? You're going out on a date, you're meeting somebody. What's the one piece of advice you would give someone with a facial difference who is meeting somebody? Or what is the one thing you wish people would know about dating a person with a facial difference? So, Jill?
Oh, first, oh, I say start with you and think about the gift that you want to give to people. That remember you have something really unique and special. Yeah, here you are on this earth, a beautiful human being, and focus on what you can the joy that you can bring to the date.
Yeah.
And also be on the other hand, also be curious about the other person. I think it's good to ask questions about the other person. I think there's something wonderful about curiosity.
I'd like to add one more thing: is just be sure your personality shines. Your character, put your character and personality out there, because that's what will hook them in. And I think that's really, shyness is not kind of a good trait in dating. I think that, if you have a facial difference, you've got to put your personality out there and let them see the gold that is within you.
I would focus on having fun instead of having these unrealistic expectations, which everybody does. But if you are you, like Dean said, your personality, just have fun.
Yeah.
That other person's with you, maybe that night, maybe the next night, who knows? But just you relax, have fun, and see where it goes, because that's the way that you can really share who you are, not pretending to be something else.
And Eric, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think what everyone's saying, I mean, just to echo it, I feel like you're the author of your own story in a lot of ways. And I think there's this tendency for people to want to skip ahead a couple chapters and figure out what the end of the story has for them. But in reality, you're writing as you go, and we're learning as we go, each moment, every minute of the day. And we're not really sure what people are going to think of us. We're not really sure what they're going to see in us, but all we know is what we have inside of ourselves and how we can kind of let that shine as best as we can. So be able to be proud of that, own that, and just let that be your guiding force as you continue to write your own story, and all the other pages will fill as they continue to go.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love that idea of writing your own story, and I love all of your advice, and it's been really a great conversation to have with all of you. I know I'm inspired to, after putting this together and talking about it tonight, to really think about what I want to do and in terms of dating and meeting somebody. So thank you, each of you, for sharing so much of yourselves today and every day. And I'm hopeful that these conversations can help others better understand our stories, while also creating a kinder world for all people with craniofacial differences. And I also want to leave you with this quote from one of my favorite authors, Brené Brown. Time is growing short. There are unexplored adventures ahead of you. You can't spend the rest of your life worried about what other people think. You were born worthy of love and belonging. Courage and daring are coursing through you. You were made to live and love with your whole heart. It's time to show up and be seen. And I also want to stress the importance of self-love. Dating can make you feel vulnerable and can test your inner strength. So I think it's very important to love yourself first, and also to remember that everyone experiences dating rejection with or without a facial difference. For more than 70 years, myFace has been dedicated to changing the faces and transforming the lives of children and adults with facial differences by providing access to holistic, comprehensive care, education, resources, and support that pave the way for better outcomes. To learn more, please visit myface.org. If you would like to learn more about the myFace support groups so that you can connect with others in the craniofacial community, please visit myface.org/online-groups. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to myFace's YouTube channel to catch future live broadcasts of myFace, myStory. You can also listen to the audio recording of your favorite podcast app on your favorite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to receive email reminders of new episodes, sign up at myface.org/mystory. That's myface.org/mystory. Thank you, and I hope you will join us for our next episode in March.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Paul, the Executive Director of myFace. myFace is a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the faces and transforming the lives of children and adults with facial differences. We do this through various programs and events such as the Transforming Lives educational webinar series, Races for Faces, the Wonder Project, and the groundbreaking myFace, myStory conversational series. You can learn more about all of these on our website at myface.org. If you enjoyed today's program, we hope you'll consider making a donation to help keep programs like this possible, as well as to further the support of the craniofacial community. Thank you.